I was halfway down Highway 70 when the brakes vanished beneath my foot. Just gone, like the road had decided it was done with me. 25 years behind the wheel, and I thought I'd seen every kind of hell asphalt could throw at a man. I was wrong. The CB was dead, the mountain was alive, and in the rearview mirror, I swear to God, I saw her face. The one I buried 15 years ago. You ever feel the road looking back at you? Like it knows what you did? Don't go anywhere, because before this run is over, you'll find out what really happens when a trucker runs out of brakes and out of second chances. Stick around, hit that follow button, drop a like, and listen to the full story. The truth behind this ride will hit harder than steel on ice. The diner at the edge of the interstate looked like it had been poured out of a memory and left to harden. The neon open flickered in the window, a tired heartbeat against the Wyoming dark. Outside, semis idled in a loose constellation, their running lights glowing like campfires on the blacktop. Snow didn't reach this far yet. That would come later in higher country. Here the night was crisp and dry, and the stars felt close enough to scrape a knuckle. Sam Dalton took his coffee the way he took the road, straight, hot, and without excuses. 25 years of hauling loads from coast to coast had worn his knuckles calloused, his jokes threadbare, and his patience into something like polished brass. He was not big on ceremony. He ate what filled him, slept when he had to, and kept the rest to himself. The waitress's name tag said June, though she looked like someone who'd answer to anything said kindly. "Refill?" she asked, already tipping the pot. "Wouldn't say no," Sam said. He sounded like gravel under tires. "You look like you've been up a spell." "I look like I've been up a life," he said. And June's laugh came easy, as if she had miles of her own. The counter held the usual shrine to the road. Laminated menus framed with coffee rings, a jar for tips, a pie you didn't trust but ordered anyway because the ritual mattered. A trucker in a Carhartt jacket traded lies with a state trooper 3 stools down. On the back wall, a corkboard sagged with handwritten notes. "Looking for a co-driver. Found dog near exit. Prayer meeting Tuesday." You could pin anything up there. A life, a loss, a wish. Sam opened his flip phone and stared at the blank screen the way a man stares at water he will not drink. No missed calls, no new messages. Nothing but the static thought that if he left it open on the counter long enough, maybe the air would turn into the voice he wanted. He closed it. The snap was louder than it had to be. "Everything all right?" June asked. He disliked that question on principle. It assumed an answer. "Everything's moving," he said. "That's as close as I get." She nodded, the kind of nod that said, "Me too." A couple of kids in beanies worked a crossword in the corner booth, all elbows and energy. A man in a Broncos cap read a paper as if it were the last one anyone would ever print. Outside, a reefer unit cycled on and off, its breath ghosting in the lamplight. The door chimed now and then with the comings and goings of men who understood how to leave. Sam's rig waited across the lot, white cab freckled with road grit, chrome dulled by winter drafts. She was a dependable beast, a Cascadia that had seen more miles than most marriages. He kept her clean where it mattered, oiled where it counted, and he had a way of checking her with his palm as he walked by, the casual touch of someone who trusts a machine more than he trusts a promise. The CB on his belt crackled. Channel 19 was a party that never stopped, only changed town. He clicked it on out of habit more than hope. "Breaker, breaker," a voice sang, too cheerful to be natural. "Any of you cowboys rolling east through the high lines, watch for a bear in the median at mile marker, everyone knows the one. He's got that hungry look." "Copy that," another voice said. "Hungry looks how he came out of the academy." Laughter fizzed across the wires, easy as tobacco smoke. Sam wasn't much for chatter, but he liked the sound of it. It was proof that the road had a pulse. June set a slice of pecan pie in front of him without asking. "Looks like you need it." "What gave me away?" "Man alone with a flip phone and coffee at this hour," she said. "You can't fool me. You boys all got the same face when you're trying to forget the same thing." "Which thing is that?" "The one that got away before you knew you were chasing it," she said, and leaned on the counter like a sister, like a stranger. "Where you headed?" "East," he said. "Denver, maybe beyond. Depends who's paying and who's waiting." "You got folks there?" He took a breath, let it go. "Got a lot of what-ifs there." She topped his cup again and didn't press. The kindness of not asking was a grace he recognized, one of the few that found him often. Outside, the wind carried the smell of diesel and cold iron. Sam paid cash and added a tip that said thank you in a different language. When he stepped into the night, the cold slapped him awake. He zipped his jacket and crossed the lot, boots knocking a rhythm on the concrete. Climbing into the cab felt like stepping into a life that fit. The cab smelled of coffee and pine air freshener and the ghost of old cigarettes. On the dash, clipped where he could not see it, a photograph caught the light from the lot. A boy with hair too long for a family picture and a grin like a dare. Ben at 17, holding a fish that he hadn't expected to catch. Sam never framed the photo. He kept it raw at the edges, like the memory. He slid the key into the ignition and waited for the dash to run its little theater. Lights coming alive, needles waking, the faint whir of checks and balances. The engine caught on the second turn, a low rumble that settled into a hush. He set the CB, tuned the radio, and cupped the thermos between his knees. "Breaker 19, a voice called. "Any of you old dogs out there, you ever figure out the cure for insomnia?" "Yeah," someone else said. "It's called a mortgage." Copy," a third voice added. "Or 3 kids in a minivan with a payment plan." Sam clicked his mic. He almost said something, some dry line to buy a place at the table. But the words snagged, and he let them go. He wasn't sure he remembered how to sit with other people's warmth without shivering. He pulled forward slow, felt the weight follow like a patient animal. The trailer was empty. That would change by morning. For now, the truck felt lighter than his bones. He swung onto the access road, took the ramp, merged with the long current of eastbound lives. The highway welcomed him with the old ceremony. The drone, the streaked lights, the way the world narrowed down to lanes and mirrors and the next few seconds. He relaxed into it the way a man relaxes into a confession. The road gave him a task so exacting, it left no room for regret. Keep it between the lines. Watch your gauges. Make the next mile. He'd learned early that the cab was the only place the past couldn't get inside unless he invited it. The trouble was, he kept finding ways to open the door. The radio found an old rock station. A voice from the 70s told him to take it easy, which he regarded as either a benediction or an insult depending on the hour. He turned it down. He preferred the sound of the world itself. The hum, the light clatter of loose change in the cup holder, the steady thump of tires over expansion joints. At a way station near Cheyenne, he rolled past the green light, blessed by chance or enforcement fatigue. The stars kept pace. Somewhere out there, past all the invisible fences, the sky curved down into the mountains he'd have to cross. He felt a tug in his chest that wasn't fear and wasn't hope. It was the call the road makes to the ones it keeps. Around midnight that isn't midnight when you measure time by exits instead of clocks. The CB found a story already underway. A young voice, wound tight but trying for swagger. "Hey, old-timers," the kid said. "What's the rule for when you know you should pull over and sleep?" A chorus of answers rose up, rude and tender. Sam smiled despite himself and keyed the mic. "When you start asking that question," he said, "you're late to the party." Silence for a beat, then laughter, then the kid again. "Copy that. You got a handle, old-timer?" Sam thought about lying. He thought about the names he'd used in other seasons, other debts. "Call me Dalton." 10-4, Dalton. I'm Sparrow." Sparrow. A name you pick when you think you're light enough to fly. "You running east?" Sam asked. "Denver by dawn," Sparrow said, as if dawn were tomorrow's last train and he had the only ticket. "Watch the grades," Sam said. "They look easy till they don't." "You sound like my uncle," Sparrow laughed. Maybe he was right, Sam said, and let the channel go quiet again. The kid's voice stayed in his head a mile or two longer than he liked. He told himself he loved the road because it told the truth. Asphalt didn't pretend to be something it wasn't. A lane was a lane. A curve was a curve. The map said what it said, and if you missed the exit, that was on you. But even as he held to that, he knew another truth hid inside it. He loved the road because it never asked him to stop. Years back in another winter, a sedan had kissed the guardrail at the wrong angle on a night like this. He had watched the world tilt, watched the headlights blur, waited for the moment when metal speaks in its real voice. He didn't let himself go all the way there. Not yet. The memory would come when it wanted, and it would take the wheel if he let it. He focused on the line where the dark met his beams and followed it like a creed. At a rest area outside Sterling, he pulled in and parked nose out, the way men do when they like to know how to leave. He poured a slug of coffee and let it sear a path down. The phone in the cup holder lay face up, a black zero of possibility. He picked it up, scrolled to a name he hadn't said out loud in months. Ben. He didn't call? Not yet. He rehearsed words that all seemed like lies against the bone. "How you been, son? You still at the shop? I heard the team won state. You still playing?" Small words to keep from stepping on the big ones. "I'm sorry. I should have. I didn't. I loved her. I failed you. I ran." The engine idled. Somewhere behind him, a couple argued in low, dense syllables that sounded like a language all marriages invent. A freight train hushed past beyond the trees, dragging the night north. He set the phone down where he'd found it. The screen went to sleep. He envied it. Back on the highway, a light dust began, a whispered rehearsal for what the mountains would make of it. He leaned forward, as if he could look around the future. The CB stayed quiet. Sparrow had either found a place to park or run past his fear into that shine of speed, where even the greenest drivers mistake energy for competence. Sam checked his mirrors, checked his gauges, checked the photograph with the boy and the fish. "You watching the road, Ben?" he said to the empty cab. "You see how it looks like it goes on forever till it doesn't?" The boy in the picture grinned as if to say, "You going to keep asking questions you already know the answers to?" He smiled without meaning to. He felt old and not old, wrecked and not wrecked, like a bridge they still trust with school buses because it hasn't fallen yet. The line of taillights ahead thinned, then thickened near the long pull that led to Colorado. He settled his hands on the wheel the way a priest settles his on a book. The miles came to him, and he received them. He would get a call before morning. That's what he told himself sometimes. A superstition no more rational than knowing when to switch to the left lane, because the right would suddenly clog with a broken-down Buick that hadn't yet decided to brake. He would get a call, and it would be his son, and the voice would not be the last voice Sam remembered. It would be a new one, built from some scaffolding of forgiveness Sam hadn't earned, but might one day hold. The night held its breath. He drove into it, not because he loved it, though he did, but because he didn't know how to stop. Behind him, the diner's neon went on flickering, an open sign for anyone who needed a place to be for the length of a refill. Ahead, the black ribbon rose almost imperceptibly, lifting him toward the shadow of higher ground. Somewhere in the faint buzz of the CB, a kid called Sparrow muttered a thanks to nobody in particular and kept his foot where it was. Sam Dalton rolled east, coffee near his right knee, photograph above the dash, the road humming its old promise. Keep moving and nothing catches you. He knew better. He went anyway. The call came just before dawn, when the world is thin and brittle, when even the light seems to hesitate before stepping out onto the road. Sam had parked for a few hours at a truck stop outside Denver, one of those places that sold everything from fuel to fried hope. He was half asleep in the bunk, dreaming about nothing, which was the best he could hope for these days. When his dispatcher's number lit up the burner phone, he stared at the screen a moment before answering. The clock on the dash read 5:41. "Dalton," he said, voice still coated with sleep. "Sam, we got a special for you," came Walt's voice, a man who sounded like he'd been born with a headset on. "It's holiday pay, double rate, emergency run through the Rockies. They need backup generators in Silverton before dawn tomorrow." "Silverton?" Sam repeated, rubbing the back of his neck. "That's a hell of a drive this time of year." "Yeah, well, the weather's turning. Storm's tracking north out of New Mexico. You'd better hit the road before she finds her teeth. Company's desperate, though. You deliver before sunrise, they'll pay extra. Enough to cover your rig's new tires, and then some. Money. That old seducer. It always sounded reasonable when it came from Walt's mouth. "What's the load weight?" Sam asked. "Light. 4 pallets, nothing major. You'll run solo. They just need someone they can trust." Trust. Another dangerous word. He could have said no. Could have said, "Not this time," and crawled back into his bunk. But there was a space in his chest where rest didn't fit anymore. "Text me the manifest," he said, and hung up. By 6:30, the diesel was growling beneath him again. The sky in the east was just beginning to bleed color, pink and pale as a healing bruise. Snow flurries drifted across the windshield, lazy, uncommitted flakes that would soon grow teeth. As he fueled up, another rig pulled alongside, an older Peterbilt with a paint job that had survived better decades. The driver was young, couldn't have been 30, wearing a cap backward and a grin that said, the world still owed him more good than bad. He hopped down from his cab and stretched like a man waking from a shorter dream. "Mornin', old-timer," he said. "You rolling west or running for cover?" Sam smirked. "If I was running for cover, I wouldn't be standing here." The kid laughed. "Fair enough. Name's Jesse. First winter run through the Rockies." "Everyone says it's no joke." "It's not," Sam said. "What are you hauling?" "Holiday stuff for a big box store in Grand Junction. Toys, electronics, the kind of things folks will kill each other over at a discount." He grinned. "You?" "Generators," Sam said. "Town out there's waiting on me to keep the lights on." "Sounds noble," Jesse said, and leaned on his truck. "You ever think about quitting this gig? Getting a real Christmas somewhere? Fireplace, family, all that?" Sam gave him a look that said too much. "Had it once," he said. "Didn't end well. Jesse nodded, the grin fading a little. Yeah, happens. The wind picked up. The sky darkened around the edges. Sam pulled his jacket tighter. You know, Jesse said after a pause, my old man drove rigs his whole life. He used to say something that stuck with me. Sometimes you gotta know when to hit the brakes, even if the road's still straight. Sam sipped his coffee, eyes on the mountains far ahead, already dusted with snow. You tell your old man he's smarter than most. He's dead, Jesse said plainly, then smiled again, lighter this time. But I like to think he still checks my mirrors now and then. They stood there a while, two ghosts of different ages, watching their breath curl into the cold. Then Jesse clapped his gloves together. Well, guess I better hit it before the weather changes its mind. See you on the other side, Dalton? Maybe, Sam said, though he knew maybe meant almost never on the road. People passed like exits, one blink and gone. He finished fueling, checked the straps on his load, and climbed back into the cab. The sky was dark again, heavy with the promise of snow. As he eased onto Interstate 70, the road ahead gleamed faintly like a ribbon pulled taut across the mountains. The hours passed. The sun never fully showed its face. The snow came in flurries that turned into sheets, then back into teasing mist. Sam drove through it all, with the discipline of a man who'd long since traded adrenaline for habit. The radio was a constant companion, sometimes news, sometimes country, sometimes just static, filling the silence between thoughts. Around noon, a local DJ in Denver was talking about the Giker Christmas Miracle Run, volunteers driving through bad weather to bring power and supplies to remote towns. You're the miracle, old man, Sam muttered to himself, sipping lukewarm coffee. He checked his mirrors again, saw only white swirling in the wind. The loneliness didn't bother him anymore. It was like gravity, invisible but absolute. He'd stopped fighting it years ago. Every now and then, his mind would drift toward Ben. He wondered where his son was spending Christmas, probably with friends. Maybe still in that small apartment in Kansas City, the one with the cracked window that Sam had offered to fix 100 times. Ben had stopped answering calls last year. The silence had grown between them like rust. Sam wanted to believe there was still time. But he also knew that belief was the cheapest fuel there was, burned fast and left nothing behind. By the time he reached the foothills west of Denver, the snow had teeth. It bit at his wipers, clogged his mirrors, and clawed at the trailer's flanks. He downshifted, listening to the engine's hum, steady and deep, like an animal that trusted its instincts more than its master. As he climbed toward the Eisenhower Tunnel, the storm swallowed the road ahead. He switched on his fog lights. The world became a tunnel of white, no end, no beginning. Through the radio's hiss, a familiar voice came alive, young, nervous. Jesse. Breaker 19, this is Sparrow. Anyone got eyes past Silver Plume? Road's getting mean out here. Sam clicked his mic. Copy, Sparrow. You're gonna want to gear down and take it slow. Chains if you got 'em. Already on. You out here too? About 10 miles behind. Keep your lights on and don't fight the drift. 10-4, Dalton. Appreciate the wisdom. Sam smiled faintly. Don't call it wisdom. Just bad experience. Jesse's laugh cut through the static. Ain't that the truth? He passed through the tunnel as darkness fell, headlights stretching into a storm that had turned the Rockies into a living thing. Growling, breathing, shifting under its own weight. The wipers clacked, the heater hummed, and the road curved upward into places no map could explain. He thought of Jesse's words again, or his father's. Know when to hit the brakes, even if the road's straight. Sam wasn't sure he'd ever known that moment. Maybe that was why he was still alive. Maybe that was why he wasn't really living. The snow kept falling, erasing the past mile before he could look back. Tomorrow, the generators had to reach Silverton before dawn. The contract said so. The storm didn't care. Neither did the ghosts that rode with him. One with his wife's voice, the other with his son's silence. He leaned forward, eyes fixed on the endless white. "Let's go," he whispered to the road. "One more run." The truck roared, gears catching, and the highway disappeared behind him like everything else. The storm followed him down the slope like a rumor that refused to die. Snowflakes came in sideways, wind cutting across the road in sharp, invisible lines. The world outside had turned the color of static. Sam Dalton leaned forward in his seat, squinting past the streaked windshield, one hand on the wheel, the other wrapped around his thermos, like it was the only warm thing left in America. He'd been driving since sunrise, though that word didn't mean much now. The sun hadn't shown itself since Colorado Springs. The clock on the dash said 7:40 in the evening, but it might as well have been 2 in the morning or forever. The only time that mattered was arrival. The delivery window ended before dawn, and Silverton was still a long way off. He clicked on the CB for company. Channel 19 was half dead this high in the mountains. Just the occasional hum of another driver trying to keep awake. Static bled into the cab like a pulse. Then a voice cut through, smooth and practiced. "And now, for anyone burning diesel on Interstate 70 tonight, we're dedicating this next segment to those we've lost on the road. It's December 23rd, folks. Memorial Day for the forgotten ones. You know who you are. You always do." Sam froze. That voice came from highway radio, a late-night station that bounced between frequencies, always finding him when he least wanted it to. The DJ called himself Big Roy, and he specialized in 2 things: old rock ballads and unwanted memories. Sam reached for the dial, then stopped. Maybe some pain deserved to be heard again. Big Roy continued, his voice low and kind. "Every December, we read a few names, take a few calls, and remind each other that the road remembers. Tonight's first dedication comes from a listener out of Topeka. He writes, 'To my dad, who drove till he couldn't anymore. You said you'd come home for Christmas. You almost made it.'" The song that followed was "Simple Man" by Lynyrd Skynyrd. The chords hit like a heartbeat. Sam felt his jaw tighten. He hadn't heard that song in years. His wife, Laura, used to hum it when they drove together in the old Ford pickup, before life turned to asphalt and guilt. He could see it now, the night that refused to leave him alone. But they'd been driving east out of Gallup, the road a silver thread under the desert stars. Ben had been 14, half asleep in the back seat, headphones in, some rock song leaking from cheap speakers. Laura had been laughing about something, maybe his singing, maybe the way he called every gas station coffee gourmet. "Pull over, Sam," she'd said gently. "You're tired." "I'm fine," he'd said, though he wasn't. The run from LA had been brutal. 20 hours on too little rest and too much caffeine. She reached over, touched his arm. "Please, just a motel. One night. You're not 20 anymore." He smiled. Not even close. He remembered blinking. Once. Twice. Then the lights came. A truck crossing the median. The sound like the world tearing. Screech of tires. His hands spinning the wheel. Laura's gasp. The impact had felt like silence turned inside out. When he woke, He was upside down. The smell of antifreeze. Shattered glass. His head ringing. Laura wasn't breathing. He remembered her hand still on his arm, fingers slack but warm. He remembered shouting her name until the paramedics arrived, though later they told him she'd been gone before the sirens ever started. Ben had survived. Broken wrist, bruised ribs. But he hadn't looked at his father for weeks. When he finally did, it wasn't hate in his eyes. It was absence, like something had gone dark and stayed that way. The hum of the tires brought Sam back to the present. His knuckles whitened around the wheel. He hadn't said her name out loud in years, not even to Ben. It was safer that way. The radio hummed again. And now, a little reminder for those still running through the snow tonight. Slow it down, boys and girls. The world will wait for your delivery. Nothing out there worth dying for, especially not a schedule. Sam exhaled, a humorless chuckle. You ever tell dispatch that, Roy? The CB crackled unexpectedly. Dalton, that you? It was Jesse, Sparrow. Still here, Sam said. Where you sitting? Couple miles behind you, I think. Just past a rest stop near Leadville. Road's slicker than politics. Copy that. Keep her steady. Hey, Jesse said, voice quieter now. That radio guy, Big Roy. You ever listened to him before? Sam hesitated. Yeah, years ago. He said something about remembering the ones who didn't make it home. Got me thinking about my old man. He died hauling lumber near Reno. Brakes went out on a downhill. Guess that's the risk, huh? Sam's stomach turned cold. Yeah, he said softly. That's the risk. You ever lose anyone out here? Jesse asked. Sam thought about lying. He wanted to. But the truth had teeth. Yeah, I did. Family? Sam's jaw flexed. Yeah. The CB went quiet for a long stretch. Only the snow's whisper and the engine's heartbeat filled the void. Finally, Jesse said, well, guess we both drive with ghosts then. Maybe that's why we don't stop. Sam didn't answer. He couldn't. One of the highway curved around a canyon rim, snow now ankle-deep on the shoulder. Sam caught the reflection of his own lights in a road sign half buried in frost. Silverton, 112 miles. He rubbed the fatigue from his eyes and shifted down. The wind screamed through the gaps in the cab, sharp as memory. He told himself to focus on the gears, the mirrors, the slope. Not on Laura's voice, not on Ben's silence. But as he climbed higher, the storm eased, and the sky opened just enough to reveal a pale moon, thin as a scar. In that light, the world looked fragile again, like it could break if he breathed too hard. He turned the radio down and whispered to no one. I didn't mean to, Laura. I swear to God, I didn't mean to. The only answer was the low hum of the road. Then an hour later, he pulled over at a turnout overlooking a frozen valley. He killed the engine, the sudden silence pressing against his ears. The air outside was bitter, electric. He stepped out, boots crunching in the snow, breath clouding like smoke. He leaned on the guardrail, looking down at the white sprawl below, tiny pinpricks of light marking distant farmhouses. His phone buzzed in his pocket, a number he didn't recognize. He almost didn't answer. Then, on instinct, he did. Yeah? Nothing. Just wind and static. Then faintly, Dad? He froze. Ben? The line cracked. Yeah, it's me. The sound of that voice, older, hoarser, uncertain, hit him like a freight train. You okay? Sam asked. Yeah, The line sputtered again. I heard you were still driving. Mom's anniversary's coming up. I don't know why I called. Sam swallowed hard. I'm glad you did. Static swallowed the rest. The line went dead. He tried calling back, but the screen stayed blank. No signal, just like before. He stood there a long while, snow gathering on his shoulders, the world humming softly beneath him. Then he climbed back into the cab, started the engine, and merged onto the road once more. This time, he didn't turn on the radio. He didn't need a DJ to remind him what he'd lost. The road was already whispering it in every mile. The snow had turned from a whisper into a roar. By the time Sam Dalton hit the switchbacks above Ouray, it wasn't a storm anymore. It was a white animal with teeth. The wipers couldn't keep up, and the glass was fogged from the inside with his breath. He leaned forward, shoulders tight, eyes burning from strain, the hum of the engine the only sound in the world that made sense. The road wound upward like a promise no one meant to keep. Below, the canyon fell away into darkness, its edges buried under drifts. A plow had gone through earlier, but the wind was undoing its work with every gust. The radio stayed off. The CB crackled now and then, lonely voices checking in, drivers counting the miles like prayers. Sam gripped the wheel tighter, forcing his mind to stay on the line where the headlights met the snow. No drifting, no remembering, no ghosts tonight. He was past that rest stop now, past the point where the smart ones parked and waited. But he wasn't built for waiting. Never had been. He'd learned early that motion could pass for peace if you didn't look too close. The thermos beside him was empty. The photo of Ben, 17, fishing line taut in the sun, watched him from the dash. Every now and then, Sam caught himself glancing at it, the way a man checks a rearview mirror even when he knows what's behind him. The voice from the phone call still echoed in his head. Dad, I don't know why I called. He'd replayed those few words for hours now. If the storm hadn't cut the signal, maybe there would have been more. Maybe an apology, or maybe another silence. Either one would have been something. Silverton by dawn, he muttered, like a charm against the snow. Half an hour later, the road began to rise again. The grade sharpened. He downshifted, the engine growling low and steady. The tires bit into the slush, searching for grip. A pair of tail lights appeared ahead, faint red ghosts in the white. Sam eased closer until the CB sparked to life. Breaker 19, that you, Dalton? He smiled despite himself. Copy, Sparrow. You're a stubborn son of a gun. Could say the same for you, old man, Jesse said. His voice was tight, strained. I almost pulled over back there, but figured if you were still going, I'd better try. Bad logic, Sam said. I'm full of it, Jesse replied. Sam could hear chains rattling through the speaker, metal against asphalt. You holding steady? He asked. For now. This wind's trying to throw me in the ditch, though. You see that flashing sign back there? Said avalanche risk ahead. Makes a guy feel real cozy. Keep your lane, Sam said. Don't brake hard on the turns. You'll lose traction. Yeah, Dad, Jesse teased. But the fear in his voice was real. For a while, they drove in companionable silence, the CB humming softly between them. Then Jesse said, quieter this time, You ever get tired of it? The road, I mean. Every day, Sam said. So why keep going? Sam thought about that. Because stopping's harder. Yeah, Jesse said. Guess I get that. By midnight, they reached Red Mountain Pass. The world was pure white chaos. Wind, snow, fog, all blending into a single living thing. The road narrowed, carved out of the mountain's edge. No guardrail, no shoulder, just drop in darkness. Jesse's taillights flickered ahead. then disappeared around a bend. "Dalton," the CB cracked. "You catching this wind? Feels like it's pushing sideways." "Yeah. Keep your trailer straight. Don't fight it too much." The truck shook as a gust slammed the side. Sam steadied the wheel. He was sweating under his jacket now, though the cab was cold. Every nerve in his arms burned. He remembered driving this pass years ago with Laura beside him. Summer, clear skies, the mountains green instead of white. She'd leaned her head against the window and said, "It's beautiful up here. You ever think about what it'd be like to just stop?" He'd laughed then. Stop? And do what? Now the memory hit like a weight. Maybe she hadn't been talking about the truck. Maybe she'd meant the running. "Dalton?" Jesse's voice broke in again. "You good?" "Yeah, just thinking." Dangerous habit. Sam smiled faintly. "You don't know the half of it." Huck, the snow thickened. The road narrowed again. A sign flashed by. Chain Station. Next 170 miles. 70 miles of mountain road. He felt the weight of it like a hand pressing on his chest. He kept climbing. The grade steepened, gears whining. His headlights caught nothing but white. The world felt small and infinite all at once. Then, without warning, the radio came alive again. Not Jesse this time, but Big Roy. Voice cutting through the static like a sermon. "And for those of you still braving the mountain tonight, here's a message from someone out there on Channel 19. Says, tell Dalton to ease up before the road takes what the years didn't." Sam's heart stuttered. "What the hell?" he muttered. He grabbed the mic. "Big Roy, where'd that come from?" "Static." He tried again. "Who sent that?" More static. Then a whisper, low, almost human. "Stop running, Sam." The mic slipped from his hand. It clattered against the floor. He froze. The voice hadn't been Roy's. It hadn't been anyone from the CB. It was a voice he hadn't heard in 15 years. Laura's. He shut his eyes, shook his head hard. "You're tired," he told himself. "You're hearing what you want to hear." When he opened them again, the world was still white, still endless. But something inside him had shifted. Some quiet panic rising beneath the surface. The tires slipped once on the next curve. He eased off the throttle, breathing slow, steady. "You're not here," he whispered. "You're gone." But the voice stayed, soft as snow. "Then why are you still driving, Sam?" By the time the grade leveled, his hands were trembling. The worst of the climb was over. He pulled onto a narrow turnout and parked. The wind howled around the cab like a living thing. He turned off the engine, let the silence settle. His breath came in visible clouds. He reached for the photo on the dash. The boy in it, his son, frozen in sunlight, smiled like the world was still kind. Sam pressed a thumb to the corner of the picture. "I'm trying," he said. "I really am." The words fogged the glass and vanished. Outside, the snow fell softer now. The storm was moving east, leaving behind a pale sky and a long, silent stretch of road ahead. He'd made it over the climb. But the real descent, the one that mattered, was still coming. And somewhere behind him, down the mountain, Jesse's faint headlights wound upward through the storm, chasing the same ghosts. The storm broke just before dawn, and for a brief, treacherous moment, the world looked peaceful again. Snow lay deep on the mountain like a white sheet pulled over something that should have been left buried. The sky cleared to a bruised gray, the kind of color that lives between night and morning. Sam Dalton's rig crawled along the crest of the pass, his headlights still cutting the last tatters of fog. He'd been driving for 19 straight hours. His shoulders ached. His eyes felt like sand. His mind, though. His mind was awake. Too awake. The engine hummed beneath him, a living creature that trusted him without reason. The road began to slope downward, slow at first, then steeper. The sign flashed by in the half-light. Warning, 6% grade next 12 miles. Check brakes. He read it twice, as if the mountain was trying to tell him something personal. Yeah, he muttered. I know the drill. He downshifted, feeling the heavy tug of the trailer behind him. The sound of the Jake brake filled the cab, that low, rolling growl that every trucker knew like his own heartbeat. It steadied him. For a moment, it almost felt like control. The road snaked down between pines weighed heavy with snow. To the east, the first hint of dawn painted the peaks pale gold. For the first time all night, Sam let himself exhale. Maybe he'd make it after all. Deliver the generators, grab a few hours' sleep, call Ben again. Maybe the signal would hold this time. The CB hissed. Dalton, you still with me? Jesse's voice came through, thinner now. Right here, Sam said. You make it over? Yeah. Barely. Almost kissed the guardrail on the switchback. I'm about 3 miles behind you. Good. Keep it slow. Road's slick as hell. Copy that. Sam adjusted his mirrors. The world behind was empty but for swirling snow. The grade sharpened again. He pressed the brake gently. Nothing. He frowned, pressed again, harder. The pedals sank under his boot, soft and useless. He pressed again. Nothing. The truck didn't slow. For a heartbeat, the world held perfectly still. Then it all came apart. The Jake brake roared. He downshifted, 5th, 4th, trying to hold the weight. The trailer bucked behind him, fishtailing just enough to remind him what gravity could do when it got ideas. Come on, he muttered, gripping the wheel hard. He stomped the brake again. The pedal hit the floor. The speedometer climbed, 30, 40, 50. The CB exploded with static. Dalton, you all right? Brakes are gone. What? Brakes are gone! The road screamed beneath him. The wind, the tires, the engine fighting the slope. He shifted down again, the gearbox grinding like teeth. Sparks lit beneath the trailer wheels as the chains bit into ice. Use your runaway ramp, Jesse's voice shouted through the speaker. There's one at mile marker. Too far, Sam barked. I'll never make it. The rig barreled down the mountain, engine howling, the trailer shuddering like it wanted to break free. He could see the curve ahead, sharp left, no shoulder, guardrail thin as paper. Beyond that, a drop into the valley. The steering wheel trembled in his hands. Sweat dripped down his temple, his jaw locked tight. He thought of Laura. The crash, her voice saying, "Stop running, Sam." He thought of Ben, the call that cut out halfway through forgiveness. He thought of Jesse, still somewhere behind, listening to the sound of his old man's fate playing out in real time. Dalton, talk to me. What's it look like? Looks like a long way down, Sam said quietly. He forced the transmission into low, the engine screaming. The tires fought for traction, lost it, caught again. He could smell burning rubber, the faint, sweet stench of overheating pads. Ahead, movement, a minivan. Blue. Family sticker on the back window. Mom, Dad, 2 kids, a dog. His pulse stopped. They were maybe 300 yards ahead, crawling cautiously through the turn. They didn't know what was coming. God, no, he whispered. Not again. He hit the air horn. The mountain echoed with its cry. The van jerked to the side, its brake lights flaring red in the snow. He had two choices now. He could hold the lane and plow through them, survive the impact maybe. Or he could swerve left, take the ditch, and pray the snowbank was deep enough to catch him. He saw the reflection of the kids' faces in the minivan's rear window. And then he saw Laura. Not as she'd been in the crash, but as she'd been before it. Laughing, warm, alive. "Sometimes you gotta know when to hit the brakes," Jesse's voice echoed from memory. Sam smiled, just barely. "Guess I finally learned, kid." He yanked the wheel left. The rig lurched off the road, tires biting into deep snow. The world turned white. The trailer jackknifed, metal twisting like a scream. The cab lifted, tilted, and slammed into the embankment. For a moment, he was weightless. Then came the crash, a roar of metal, glass, and wind. The world flipped once, twice, then stopped. Silence followed, broken only by the hiss of leaking air and the faint creak of settling steel. Sam hung in his seatbelt, blood running warm down his temple. The windshield was a spiderweb of cracks. Steam rose from the radiator. In the distance, through the hiss and groan, came a sound, faint, human. A child crying. He smiled. "Good," he whispered, voice ragged. "Good." He tried the door. It wouldn't budge. His legs screamed in protest. He could taste copper. Somewhere behind the static, Jesse's voice was still shouting his name. He reached for the CB, hand trembling. "Tell them," he said, coughing. "Tell them the road's clear. They made it." "Dalton, hang on, man. Rescue's coming, you hear me?" But Sam wasn't listening anymore. The world was fading into soft gray. Snowflakes drifted through the shattered window, landing on his bloodied hand. He looked at the photo still clipped to the dash, Ben, smiling in the sun, forever 17. "I stopped, kid," he whispered. Finally stopped. And then the night took him. The mountains held its breath. Snow drifted softly in the aftermath, the storm finally breaking into silence. The twisted wreck of Sam Dalton's rig steamed in the cold, its metal still ticking from the heat of friction and fire. The world had gone still enough that you could hear the wind moving through the canyon, like the earth itself was whispering prayers. Jesse, Sparrow on the radio, came around the curve moments later, his headlights cutting through the fog. What he saw turned his stomach. "Jesus," he muttered, slamming the brakes, skidding slightly before his truck came to a stop. Sam's cab was halfway buried in snow, the trailer bent at an impossible angle, one side torn open like a wound. A few crates had burst free, metal generators scattered across the drift like bones. The minivan, miraculously, sat upright farther down the road. Steam rose from its hood, but the lights were still on. He killed his engine, grabbed his flashlight, and jumped down into the snow. His boots sank deep as he ran toward the wreck. "Dalton!" he shouted over the wind. "Sam, you hear me?" No answer, just the creak of cooling metal. He climbed up the side of the tilted cab, boots slipping on ice, fingers clawing for grip. When he finally reached the door, he saw it was bent inward, glass shattered, a spider web of blood and frost marking the inside. "Come on, old man," Jesse breathed, yanking at the handle. It didn't move. He pulled again, harder, metal screaming in protest. "Don't you quit on me now." From inside, faint and broken, came a sound, a cough. "Sam?" "Yeah," a rasping voice answered. "That you, kid?" Jesse's heart nearly stopped with relief. "Yeah, it's me. Sit tight. I'm gonna get this door open." "Don't bother," Sam said weakly. "Ain't much left of it." "The hell there isn't." Jesse dug through his cab until he found a crowbar. He jammed it under the door, bracing his shoulder against the side of the truck. Metal groaned, then cracked loose enough for a pocket of air to rush out. Inside, Sam hung sideways in his seat, the seatbelt still holding him in place. His face was pale under the blood and dirt, one leg pinned under the twisted dash. "Hey," Jesse said softly, trying to smile. "You look like hell." Sam chuckled once, a sound that ended in a wheeze. "You should see the other guy. Don't talk. We're getting you out of here." "Forget it," Sam said, voice fading. "Just check the van. Family's okay?" Jesse turned. Down the slope, he could see the figures, 2 adults, 2 kids, huddled together near their car, headlights painting them in a soft gold. One of the adults waved, shouting something he couldn't hear, but their movements said everything. They were alive. "They're fine," Jesse said. "They made it, Sam. You saved them." A faint smile tugged at Sam's lips. "Good." Sirens echoed faintly from far down the mountain, thin and distant, but real. Jesse's flashlight beam flickered across the dash, catching the photo clip there. A boy with a fish, the sunlight so bright it almost looked alive. "Your son?" Jesse asked quietly. "Yeah. He's going to want you around, you know." Sam's eyes flickered open, hazy but focused. "You got kids?" "No," Jesse said. "Not yet." "Then you don't know." Sam coughed again, blood flecking his chin. "Sometimes the hardest thing isn't staying alive. It's living after you screw it all up." "Hey," Jesse said sharply. "None of that. You didn't screw anything up tonight. You stopped. You did what nobody else would have done." Sam didn't answer right away. He stared past Jesse, into the pale dawn climbing over the peaks. "Funny thing," he murmured. "Whole life I thought moving was what kept me alive. Turns out stopping was the only thing that did." Jesse looked down, jaw tight. "You hang in there. Help's coming. You're going to make it." Sam's breathing hitched, shallow now. His hand twitched toward the CB mic, still dangling by its cord. Jesse grabbed it and placed it near his fingers. "You tell them," Sam said. "Tell them I cleared the road. Tell them I'm—" The rest was lost in a rattle of breath. Jesse shook his head. "You can tell them yourself. Just hold on." The sirens grew louder. Rescue lights flashed against the snow. A fire engine, an ambulance, a county truck, all carving through the drift like red ghosts. The rescuers moved fast, efficient, shouting in clipped words that barely carried through the wind. Jesse backed away to give them room. He stood there in the road, watching strangers cut into the twisted cab with hydraulic claws, sparks flying like fireflies in the dawn. He felt hollow and furious and heartbroken all at once. When they finally pulled Sam free, the paramedics worked on him in the snow. One knelt beside him, calling out numbers Jesse didn't understand. Another covered his chest with blankets. After a long minute, one of them looked up and shook her head. Jesse closed his eyes. The wind carried a sound that could have been a sigh or could have been the mountain exhaling. He walked a few steps away, wiped his face with the back of his glove. The family from the van had come closer now, the father clutching his wife, the kids staring wide-eyed. "Was he the driver?" the man asked. "Yeah," Jesse said. "He saved us." Jesse nodded, voice raw. "Yeah, he did." Hours later, when the road was cleared and the wreck hauled away, Jesse sat in his cab with the CB on low. The sky had gone from gray to bright blue, the storm's violence already fading into something that looked almost peaceful. He picked up the mic. "Breaker 19, he said, his voice steady but quiet. "This is Sparrow. Got a message for anyone rolling through Red Mountain today." He paused. Roads open, the mountains clear. And if you're out there chasing miles like they're gonna save you, take it from me. Sometimes stopping's the only thing that does. He let go of the mic. The channel went quiet. After a moment, he reached over to the passenger seat. There, wrapped in an emergency blanket, lay Sam's photo. The boy with the fish, smiling at the camera. Jesse picked it up, looked at it for a long time. Then he set it carefully on the dash. Outside, the snow began to fall again, soft and harmless now. The kind that melts when it lands, leaving no mark at all. Jesse started his engine, the hum filling the cab like a heartbeat. He looked once more toward the mountains, toward the curve where the road had taken everything and given something back. "Rest easy, old man," he whispered. You stopped. Then he pulled onto the highway, gears shifting smooth, the road unwinding before him like a story that wasn't quite finished. When the world came back, it came back in pieces. Light first, thin, sterile, flickering through the haze. Then sound, steady beeps, the low hum of machines, the muted shuffle of footsteps somewhere close. Sam tried to open his eyes, but the lids felt heavy, stitched with sleep and pain. He wasn't sure if he was dreaming or if the dream had ended and this was what was left. The air smelled like antiseptic and old coffee. Somewhere a nurse laughed softly, the sound small and human against all that machinery. He tried to move. Pain bloomed instantly, deep and sharp in his ribs, his leg, his head. He grunted, "Hey, easy." A voice, low, close, familiar. He turned his head, just enough to see a figure sitting by the bed. A man, mid-30s maybe, beard grown and uneven, eyes tired. A face he knew better than his own. Ben. For a long moment, Sam just stared. The room went quiet except for the machines marking his heart's insistence on carrying on. Ben leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "You're awake," he said, voice thick with something halfway between relief and disbelief. Sam wanted to answer, but his throat was dry. He tried to speak. Nothing came out but a rasp. "Don't," Ben said quickly. "You don't have to talk. Doctor said you'd come around sooner or later. Guess he was right." Sam blinked slowly. His eyes found the IV line, the cast on his leg, the bandages wrapped across his chest. He'd been broken and rebuilt. "How long?" he managed to croak. 3 days, Ben said. "They airlifted you out of the mountains. Said it was a miracle you survived at all." He hesitated, voice dropping. "The state trooper told me what you did. Swerved to miss a family. You saved them." Sam closed his eyes. "Good," he whispered. Ben looked down, jaw working. "You almost died, Dad." "Wouldn't be the first time," Sam muttered. Ben laughed once, short and sharp. "Yeah, well, you're not getting out that easy." Silence filled the space between them again, heavy but not hostile. Sam studied his son, the lines on his face, the tiredness that came from years spent holding on to anger too long. "You called me," Sam said after a moment, voice rough. "Up on the mountain, before the crash." Ben nodded. "Yeah. I thought I dreamed it." "No," Ben said softly. "I was driving home. Heard about the storm on the radio. I don't know why I called. Guess I just didn't want it to be another year without trying." Sam swallowed hard. "Sorry the signal cut." "Maybe it didn't," Ben said. "Maybe that was just what it took to get through." The words sat there, simple and true. Then the nurse came in, checked Sam's vitals, smiled when she saw him awake. "Well, look who finally decided to join us," she said. "You gave us a scare, Mr. Dalton." He tried to smile back. "Guess that's what I do best. Don't make a habit of it." When she left, Ben was still watching him. "They said you're going to walk again. Might take some time, but you'll get there." Sam nodded. He could live with time. Time was a thing he'd finally learned to stop fighting. "You know," Ben said, "after Mom, I used to hate the sound of the highway. Couldn't sleep when trucks passed outside. I figured it meant someone else was out there running from what they couldn't fix." Sam looked at him, guilt and pride mixing into something too tangled to name. "You're not wrong." Ben's expression softened. "Maybe not. But you stopped, Dad. That's something." Sam smiled weakly. Didn't have much choice. "Still counts." Ben reached into his jacket pocket and pulled something out, a photograph, old and bent at the corners. He set it on the blanket. It was the same photo from the dash. Ben, 17, holding a fish too big for his hands, the sun catching his grin. "Guess the cops found it in your truck," Ben said. "Thought you'd want it back." Sam stared at it. His throat closed. "Always did," he said quietly. "Just didn't know how to say it." Ben nodded, eyes glassy. "You just did." Later that night, the hospital lights dimmed. Snow drifted outside the window, quiet and harmless this time. Sam lay awake, listening to the soft rhythm of the monitors. Ben had fallen asleep in the chair, arms crossed, head tilted. The kid looked exhausted, and for the first time in years, peaceful. Sam smiled. He'd forgotten what that looked like. He reached for the notepad on the bedside table, hands shaking a little. He wrote slowly, the pen scratching faintly on paper. "I'd like to start over, if you'll let me." He set the pen down, closed his eyes, and listened to the steady beat of his heart. For the first time in a long while, didn't sound like an engine. Spring came late to Colorado that year, but when it arrived, it came like forgiveness, slow, stubborn, and real. The snow retreated first from the valleys, then from the peaks, revealing long streaks of green and the smell of earth waking up again. The mountains still wore their crowns of white. But the roads were clear, the passes open. Truckers called it the season of second chances. Sam Dalton had been out of the hospital for nearly 2 months. The doctors said he was lucky to be alive. The therapists said he was too stubborn not to walk again. Both were right. He sat now in the driver's seat of a truck, not his old rig, but a new one. A company lease, bright red paint and chrome that still smelled factory clean. He wasn't hauling yet. This was just a test run, a short drive around the company lot. Still, his hands trembled on the wheel, a quiet mix of fear and awe. Beside him sat Ben. He'd insisted on coming along. Said somebody had to make sure the old man didn't take another mountain head on. Sam didn't argue. "Clutch feels different," Sam said, pressing his boot down lightly. "Probably because it works," Ben said. Sam laughed, actually laughed, and it felt strange in his chest, like air in a room that had been sealed too long. "You getting smart with me, boy?" "Been waiting 30 years for the chance," Ben shot back, grinning. The truck rolled forward, slow and smooth. The sound of the engine filled the cab, not the roar of the highway, but a hum like a heart starting over. "You nervous?" Ben asked. Sam shook his head. "Not nervous, just respectful." They did a loop around the yard, sunlight glinting off the windshield. Every turn, every gear shift, every breath felt like a negotiation with the past. When they parked, Ben looked at him carefully. You thinking about going back out there? For real? Maybe, Sam said. Not long hauls, just regional runs. Enough to keep busy. Ben nodded. And if I said I wanted to come along? Sam looked at him, unsure if he was joking. He wasn't. You serious? Ben shrugged. I've been thinking about it. I'm between jobs. Figured I could use a change of scenery. Maybe see what kept you out there all those years. Sam turned the engine off. The silence that followed was wide and gentle. You sure you want that? He asked quietly. It's not much of a life. Ben smiled. Maybe not, but it's yours. And maybe it's time I saw it for myself. Sam looked down at his hands, scarred, trembling just a little. Then he looked at his son and felt something shift inside him, like a gear finally catching. All right, he said, but you're buying the coffee. Their first trip together wasn't far, just a supply run from Denver to Amarillo. 2 days there and back, no mountain passes, no deadlines sharp enough to bleed on. They loaded early, checked the rig twice, and hit the road as the sun came up. Ben took the passenger seat, boots on the dash, window cracked. The radio played soft classic rock, the Eagles, Fleetwood Mac, a little Seeger, songs that sounded like home. For the first few miles, they didn't say much. They didn't have to. The hum of the tires on clean asphalt was its own kind of language. At a rest stop outside Pueblo, they grabbed coffee and sat on the tailgate, watching the morning stretch wide. You know, Ben said, when I was a kid, I used to hate these places. I thought they were where people went to disappear. Sam sipped his coffee. Sometimes they are. Ben nodded slowly. You ever wished you'd stopped sooner? Sam thought about that for a long time. Every day, he said finally. But if I had, maybe I wouldn't have learned what stopping really meant. Ben smiled. That's about the most dad thing you could have said. Sam chuckled. Don't get used to it. By the time they crossed into New Mexico, the sky had turned the color of steel and lavender. The sun dipped behind the desert hills, and for a moment, the highway glowed gold, as if the world itself was exhaling. Ben leaned back in his seat. You ever get tired of this view? Not once, Sam said. He reached forward and turned up the radio. Take It Easy came on. Eagles, of course. Ben laughed. Oh, come on, really? It's tradition, Sam said. Every driver's got a song that keeps him between the lines. Ben shook his head, but he was smiling. You're such a cliché. Damn right, Sam said, tapping the wheel in rhythm. They drove through the dusk, headlights carving the road ahead. The miles came and went, not like an escape anymore, but like a rhythm. Steady, earned, and shared. Somewhere outside Tucumcari, Ben fell asleep. Sam looked over at him and saw a man, not a boy. Saw forgiveness sitting in the passenger seat. He thought of Laura. He thought of the road. He thought of how both had nearly killed him and somehow saved him too. The wind blew soft through the cracked window, carrying the smell of sage and dust. For the first time in years, Sam didn't feel haunted. He felt whole. As by the time they reached Amarillo, dawn was spreading across the plains, wide and forgiving. They parked behind a diner called Rosie's, one of those places that looked like it had been waiting for them specifically. Ben yawned, rubbing his eyes. Breakfast? Always, Sam said. They climbed down, stretching their legs. Sam looked back at the truck, the gleam of morning light on metal, the faint reflection of two figures walking side by side. Not bad for a comeback tour, Ben said. Sam grinned. Not bad at all. He slung an arm around his son's shoulders. as they stepped inside. The bell over the door chimed, the smell of bacon and coffee rising like memory. For once, Sam didn't feel like he was running from anything. He was just driving home. The road shimmered in the morning light, a silver ribbon unspooling through fields of new green. It was spring again. Honest to God spring, not the brittle late thaw that only pretended to change things. Wildflowers burned gold and violet in the ditches, and the sky looked so wide it could swallow every mistake a man had ever made. Sam Dalton's freight liner hummed beneath him, steady as a heartbeat. The trailer was full of wind turbine components bound for Kansas, a lighter, cleaner load than anything he'd hauled in years. There was poetry in that, even if he'd never admit it. In the passenger seat, Ben sipped coffee from a travel mug that said #1 Mechanic in faded letters. His boots were on the dash, and he was humming to some tune only he could hear. The radio murmured old country, something about home and roads and forgiveness, though it all blurred into the same story after a while. "Never thought I'd see the day you'd haul green energy," Ben said, smirking. "You used to cuss every wind farm from here to Nebraska." Sam grunted. "Times change. Gotta move with the cargo." Ben chuckled. "That right? You're practically a spokesman for renewable living now." "Watch it, kid," Sam said, but his tone was light. "You're still on probation as a co-driver." Ben stretched, looked out the window. "Yeah, well, you're doing all right for an old man." Sam smiled into the wind. The banter felt easy now, unforced. The miles rolled by smooth. They'd learned the rhythm of silence, the good kind. No ghosts, no tension, just the sound of the engine, the road, and the occasional crackle of the CB when another trucker checked in. On south side of Salina, they pulled off at a rest stop surrounded by open prairie. The air was warm, sweet with clover. Sam killed the engine, and the sudden quiet felt like stepping out of time. Ben hopped down first. "You can't tell me this doesn't beat hospital food." "Anything beats hospital food," Sam said, following him. His limp was almost gone now. The doctors called it a miracle. He called it work. They sat on a picnic table, drinking coffee from a thermos and watching semis roll past on the highway, each one heading toward some story of its own. "You ever think about Mom up here?" Ben asked suddenly. Sam didn't answer right away. The wind tugged at his hair. "All the time," he said finally. "But not the way I used to." "How's that?" He took a breath. Used to see her every time I closed my eyes behind the wheel. Every bend, every mile, she was right there. Felt like punishment. Now, he looked out toward the horizon. Now it feels like company. Ben nodded slowly. "I think she'd like that." "She'd like seeing us here," Sam said. "Together." Ben smiled. She would. They sat in silence a while longer. Somewhere far off, a meadowlark sang. "My brasatuir," and I'm back on the road. The afternoon stretched out like a slow song. The CB came alive now and then with laughter, warnings about speed traps, stories only truckers could tell. It was a brotherhood that didn't care about last names or pasts, just the next mile. Ben leaned forward, listening. "You ever notice truckers talk like preachers?" Sam raised an eyebrow. "How's that?" "They all sound like they're confessing. Only difference is, their church moves at 70 miles an hour. Sam laughed. "You're not wrong, son. Guess you've been preaching a long time." He thought about that, then said, "Maybe. Just took me too long to listen to my own sermons." Ben nodded, smiling faintly. "You're a better man than you used to be." Sam looked over. "No, just an older one." By the time they reached the Kansas border, the sky was blushing orange and rose. They stopped at a diner off Highway 50. Inside, the air smelled of bacon and rain on hot asphalt. Their waitress wore a name tag that said Maggie, and she poured their coffee without asking. "You two look like trouble," she said. "Not anymore," Sam said. "We retired from that line of work." She grinned. "Sure you did." They ate in easy silence, pancakes for Ben, steak and eggs for Sam, the kind of meal that tasted like the road itself. When they paid, Maggie slipped a peppermint onto the counter and said, "You boys drive safe out there." "Storm's brewing east." Sam nodded. "Always is." Outside, the wind had picked up again, soft but insistent. They climbed into the truck, headlights cutting through the early dusk. Ben looked out the window. "You ever think you'll stop for good?" Sam turned the key, feeling the rumble through his bones. "Maybe someday, but not tonight." "Good," Ben said, settling back into his seat. "I kinda like this view." Sam smiled, eyes on the open road ahead. "Me too, kid. Me too." They drove on through the fading light, two silhouettes framed in the glow of the dash, father and son, scarred but steady, carrying a different kind of freight now. The radio found a song from another time. Sam turned it up, humming along. For once, the horizon didn't look like something to chase. It looked like something to meet halfway. The morning sun rose slow over the plains, turning the sky into a sheet of molten gold. The road stretched out in front of them, quiet, endless, patient. It didn't promise anything. It never did. It just waited. Sam Dalton rolled down the window and let the wind pour in, warm and alive. He'd driven through every kind of weather the country could throw at a man: rain, hail, blizzards, fire. But this still morning with the hum of the tires and his son beside him, was the rarest of them all. Ben was asleep again, head against the glass, one arm draped over a backpack stuffed with maps and receipts and the unglamorous debris of travel. His hair had grown longer, a soft mess that caught the light like his mother's had. Sam smiled. He didn't recognize this version of himself, the man who didn't need noise or caffeine or motion to feel alive. He'd spent half a lifetime chasing something down every road in America. And now, with nothing left to outrun, he realized it had never been about the miles. It had been about learning to stop, to breathe, to forgive. He glanced at the dash. The photo was there again, Ben at 17, holding that fish, grinning like life was simple. A second photo now sat beside it. The two of them at Rosie's diner a few weeks back, both of them laughing mid-bite, caught off guard by some dumb joke. He reached out and straightened them, careful like fragile things that had finally found a place to stay. I knew they were heading east that day. Empty trailer, light load, no deadline, just the road for the road's sake. The dispatch had called earlier, asking if he'd take another run through the Rockies. Sam had smiled and said, "Maybe next time." He'd meant it. There was no anger in the memory anymore, no fear in the word mountain. Just respect. Ben stirred, rubbed his eyes. "We there yet?" "Depends where there is," Sam said. Ben yawned, stretching. "That's the most trucker thing you've ever said." "Comes with the territory." Ben sat up, looking out the window. The fields were rolling past in soft waves of green and gold. "You know," he said, "I used to think driving was running away from everything." Sam nodded. "It can be, if you're not paying attention." "So, what is it now?" He thought for a moment. "Running towards something, or maybe just keeping up with it." Ben smiled faintly. "That's almost poetic." "Don't tell anyone. I got a reputation." They shared a laugh that felt easy, earned. 5 days later, they stopped at a scenic overlook off the highway, the kind people pass 1,000 times without noticing. From there, the land rolled out like a living map. The veins of back roads, the faint shimmer of a town far off, a freight train crawling toward the horizon. Ben stood beside him, hands in his pockets. "You ever think about where you'll stop for good?" Sam looked out at the horizon. "Used to think I'd die out here," he said. "Maybe that was the plan for a while. But now?" He took a breath. The air smelled of rain and wild grass. "Now I think I'll stop when there's nothing left to say. And maybe that's not for a while yet." Ben nodded. "Good. I was hoping for a few more runs." Sam smiled. "You're hired, kid." They stood there a while longer, watching the world turn. That night, they parked in a small town outside Wichita. The truck stop was quiet, just a few rigs idling under the sodium lights. They ate dinner in the cab, sandwiches and bad coffee, and talked about everything and nothing. At some point, Ben dozed off again, leaving the radio on low. Sam sat there in the driver's seat, engine off, listening to the soft murmur of a late-night talk host. Someone was dedicating a song to their father, a trucker who'd taught them how to see the country in lines and lights. "Here's to the ones who drive through the dark so the rest of us can wake up to morning," the host said. Sam smiled, a slow, quiet thing. He turned the dial down and looked out at the highway stretching away under the stars. The words came back to him. Jesse's voice through the CB that night after the crash. "Sometimes stopping's the only thing that saves you." He'd thought it was the end of the road. But sitting there now, with the soft sound of his son breathing beside him and the hum of the world still turning outside, he knew better. It wasn't the end. It was just another start. He leaned back, hands folded behind his head, and whispered to no one and to everyone, "Now I've got brakes." The next morning, when the sun rose again, they were already rolling east, headlights off, windows open. The highway stretched ahead like a promise that finally meant something. Somewhere between the miles, between silence and song, Sam Dalton smiled, because for the first time in his life, the road wasn't about leaving. It was about going home. I want to thank you for listening to this story. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support inspires new stories and keeps the road rolling on.